I could forgive her for the little things. The sighs, the sideways glances. Even the times she forgot my birthday but remembered his. I told myself people forget. People get tired. I should be understanding. But today, something inside me quietly snapped. It wasn't the shouting or the insults. There weren't any. That would have made it easier. Loud things can be fought, responded to. But it's the quiet kind of rejection, the soft-edged kind that pretends to be kindness, that does the deepest damage. It started simply. I came home from work a little early to set everything up. My hands were raw from the cold, bags digging into my wrists as I carried the groceries up 3 flights of stairs. My feet hurt. My back hurt. But I was humming, because this time, maybe this time, she'd say thank you. Her birthday. 72. She loved pastels, lilacs, soft lighting, lemon cake with extra glaze. I had made all of it from scratch. The candles were scented with lavender, like the ones she used to keep on her dresser when I was a child. Back when I still thought she loved me the way she loved him. He was always our boy. Even now, at 32, he still dropped in empty-handed and left with a bag full of just-in-case groceries. And her smile, her real smile, only ever belonged to him. The kind that softened her whole face, that made her eyes shine. I tried not to notice. I had practiced not noticing, but today I noticed everything. I had placed each plate with care, cut fruit, poured wine, picked out a soft playlist of the songs she used to hum when cleaning the kitchen on Sunday mornings. When she walked in, I turned to her, hoping. She looked at the table and frowned. "Oh," she said, "you didn't use the silver napkin rings." That was it. No hello. No smile. No thank you. Just a complaint about napkin rings. As if that small detail overshadowed the hours of thought and work. I laughed softly, not from humor. Just because I didn't know what else to do. "I thought these were nicer," I said, brushing one of the rings with my finger. They were simple gold, elegant. She didn't answer. She walked past me to rearrange a few things on the table, her mouth pressed tight. I watched her move my work around like it was wrong. Like I was wrong. Then the door opened, and he walked in. Of course he was late. No gifts, no food, not even a jacket. Just a joke on his lips and that usual scent of cologne and self-satisfaction. And her face lit up like morning. "There's my boy," she said, wrapping him in a hug. She kissed his cheek and patted his back as if he'd come home from war. I stood a few feet away, holding the birthday card I'd written for her. I had rewritten it 3 times, each word crafted. A paragraph about the strength she showed raising us. How grateful I was. How much I wanted her to feel celebrated. She didn't even glance at it. He dropped onto the couch, spread out, and said, "Smells good. Did Mom cook?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. "No," she said. She nodded in my direction like I was the cleaning lady. Put it together. She being me. Not my name. Just a placeholder. I smiled. Tightly. "I cooked. I thought it might be nice." He grinned at me. "You always overdo it. But hey, free food." They both laughed. I did not. I stayed quiet. I kept serving. I kept pouring. I made sure the temperature was right. The music wasn't too loud. The chairs were even. I made sure they were both comfortable. I sat down only after they had everything they needed. And then, during dinner, she looked at him and said, "You're the only one who really feels like mine." It was a passing comment. She didn't even look at me when she said it. But the air changed. Something sank in me, like a stone dropped into a deep well. He raised a brow. "What does that mean?" She shrugged, smiled, took a sip of her wine. "Oh, you look just like your father. Same chin, same eyes. I always knew you were mine." He laughed. "Well, yeah, obviously." Then she turned to me, as if remembering I was there. "You were so quiet as a baby. We used to say you just appeared one day. Like a ghost." I blinked. "I didn't know you said that." She tilted her head. Well, you always were different. He chuckled. Different how? And that's when she said it, with no cruelty in her voice. Just fact. She's not mine biologically. The room fell silent. I felt the sound leave. I didn't breathe. What? I asked, the word barely audible. She took another bite of her food, as if she'd just said the weather was nice. You were adopted. I thought you knew. I did not know. What? When? How? You were too. We didn't think it mattered. And you always tried so hard to fit in, I didn't want to upset you. Then she paused, looked me in the eye for the first time that night. But you've always felt different. Not worse. Just, not ours. Not ours. That's what she said. I stood up, quietly. My legs felt hollow. I walked to the sink and washed my hands. My fingers trembled under the water. It was warm, but I felt cold. They kept eating. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. Not even maybe I shouldn't have said that. Nothing. Just forks. Chewing. Laughter. And I realized something that shouldn't have surprised me. I had never been part of this family. I was tolerated. Useful. Quiet. Expected to serve. Expected to absorb. Expected to keep peace. But I was never loved, not really. Not for me. I had been trying to earn a seat at a table that had already been set without me. I dried my hands, picked up my coat, walked back into the dining room and said, softly, I need to go. My mother looked up, confused. Where? Home. But the cake? You can have it. I thought you made it for me. I did. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I got into my car and sat in silence. My fingers were still shaking. Not from sadness. Not yet. That would come later. No, what I felt was a kind of clarity I'd never known before. Like standing in the snow and realizing how quiet the world can be when everyone stops pretending. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of answers. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream or hit the steering wheel or call anyone. I sat there, unmoving, for almost 20 minutes. The streetlight above me flickered. The cake I'd baked sat untouched in that house. My name, too, had been left behind because I wasn't her daughter. Not really. Not in the way that mattered to her. I thought I'd be shattered. But instead, I felt hollow, like a room after the guests leave. Not broken. Just emptied out. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove with no destination. Past quiet houses. Past lit windows with birthday balloons taped to glass. Past families eating together, not knowing how much they had. At a red light, something strange happened. A memory I hadn't thought of in years surfaced, uninvited. I was 6. Sitting at the edge of the hallway, listening through the crack of the living room door. My brother had gotten in trouble for something, breaking a lamp, I think. My mother was furious at first, but then he started crying. And just like that, her tone changed. She pulled him into her arms and whispered, "It's okay, baby. I know you didn't mean it." I remember waiting there, thinking maybe she'd call me in too. Maybe she'd say she loved me without me doing anything special first. She didn't. Later, she found me. I pretended I wasn't crying, even though my face was hot. She crouched down and wiped my cheeks with a tissue. I remember what she said so clearly. "You're my strong girl. You don't need that kind of attention, right?" I nodded. Because what else could I do? That was how it began. The narrative. The role. My brother was the one who needed protecting. I was the one who needed nothing. But that wasn't true. I did need something. I just learned to live without it. That drive turned into hours. And in those hours, I saw the shape of my childhood through different eyes. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't exaggerating. I had been erased, piece by piece. She praised my brother when he forgot birthdays. She scolded me when I forgot to water the plants. He was funny. I was too much. He was independent. I was cold. He didn't clean up after himself. I got grounded for a messy room. And always, always, she defended him. He's just tired. He's got a lot on his plate. Don't be so sensitive. But I had a full plate too. I worked 2 jobs in college and sent money home. I drove her to every appointment when she was ill. I picked out gifts for her from both of us because he'd forget. I planned every single birthday she ever had. And not once did she say, "You don't have to do all this." Because she thought I did. She thought it was my place. That night, I parked in front of my apartment and just stared up at the dark window. Home. At least the version of it I paid for myself. The one no one else visited. When I got inside, I didn't turn on the lights. I left my coat on, sat down on the floor, and let the silence finally settle. There's a kind of grief no one talks about. It's not about death. It's about realizing someone was never who you hoped they were. It's about facing the truth. They saw you as useful, not lovable. Useful children get remembered when things need fixing. Lovable children get remembered just because. I remembered another moment. High school. Senior year. I got a scholarship. I came home clutching the letter like it was a golden ticket. She was sitting in the kitchen, going over the bills. I told her, breathless, that I'd won it. That my hard work had paid off. She looked up and smiled for a second. "That's great," she said, "but we still need to figure out how to get your brother through his classes." That was it. No celebration. No hug. No pride. Just a reminder that his needs would always come first. Back then, I told myself she was just stressed. That once things calmed down, she'd come around. That there would be a moment, maybe years from now, when she'd finally look at me and say, "I'm proud of you." I waited for that moment for decades. And now I knew it would never come. Because I wasn't hers. Not in blood. And maybe not in heart either. The strange thing is, knowing that gave me a sense of peace I didn't expect. I wasn't broken because I failed to win her love. I had been trying to solve a puzzle that never had all the pieces. I wasn't less than. I was just never chosen. And that's not the same thing. I stood up slowly. My legs ached. I took off my coat and folded it gently over the chair. My apartment was quiet, but in the soft kind of way I needed. I walked to the bathroom, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. Not a stranger, but someone I hadn't really seen in a long time. I was tired, but not from the day. From the years. The pretending. The bending. The hoping. And I knew something had to change. Not in them. In me. They wouldn't become different people. But I could become someone who stopped handing her heart to people who saw it as a tool. I thought about the monthly bills I paid. Her phone. Her utilities. The emergency savings I'd built to help her out. My brother's credit card I helped cover after his bad months. All of it automatic. All of it expected. Because that's what I did. The strong girl. The support beam. The dependable one. The one who didn't need thanks or love, only tasks. But now I saw it for what it was. They didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. And I didn't need to keep sacrificing myself hoping that would change. The silence in the room began to feel like something sacred. Like healing. Like the beginning of freedom. It didn't happen all at once. There was no outburst, no slammed door, no long message explaining what I felt or why. I didn't leave a dramatic voicemail. I didn't post anything online. I just stopped. It was early morning, 2 days after the birthday. The sky was a soft gray, like the inside of a shell. Snow had started to fall, light and silent, coating the edges of the windowsill outside my apartment. The world felt muffled, like it had pulled a thick blanket over itself. And inside, I was just as quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, looking at my list of auto payments. It wasn't long, but it was heavy. My mother's cell phone bill. Her heating. My brother's old debt I'd been covering, just until he caught up. Groceries delivered once a week. Gas. A little extra every month into an account, in case something happened. I had treated it like a duty. Like love. But it wasn't love. Not really. Not when it only went one way. One by one, I clicked through them. Cancelled each one. No emotion. Just facts. Like turning off lights in a house I no longer lived in. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. Then I opened my messages. My mother hadn't followed up about what she said. No apology. No explanation. Just a photo she sent yesterday of my brother holding a piece of cake. He was smiling. The caption said, "My sweet boy. You always know how to make me laugh." I hadn't heard a single word from her about me, not even a thank you for the food, for organizing, for the effort, for the years. I didn't reply to the photo. I didn't even open the message fully. I archived it and moved on. That evening, I got a text from my brother. "Hey, the electric bill bounced. You forget to send it." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed, "No, I didn't forget." No follow-up. No explanation. Just that. It took him less than a minute to call. I let it ring out. Again. And again. By the third time, he left a voicemail. His tone was half confused, half annoyed. "Hey, what's going on? Can you just fix it? I've got a lot going on and I can't deal with this right now." I didn't return the call. It wasn't spite. It wasn't revenge, not the way people usually mean it. It was just the quiet decision to stop bleeding for people who never noticed I was wounded. Outside, the snow was falling harder. The trees stood still and bare, their branches etched like ink against the fading sky. I made myself tea, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and sat by the window. I used to think love was sacrifice. That being good meant being useful. That being chosen came after being helpful. But what if love isn't something you earn? What if it's something that's simply given or withheld? What if all those years I spent proving my worth were years spent shouting into a room that had no one listening? That night, I didn't make dinner for anyone but myself. I didn't double-check anyone's schedule. I didn't organize a list of errands. I didn't make notes for upcoming doctor appointments. I didn't think about what they needed. I thought about what I needed. And I realized I didn't even know what that was. Not really. When you spend your whole life managing everyone else's chaos, your own wants become background noise. But as the snow fell and the world softened, I heard that noise begin to rise. I wanted peace. Not the kind where everything is perfect. The kind where you don't have to explain yourself just to be allowed to exist. The kind where silence doesn't feel like punishment. The next morning, I didn't check my phone right away. I took a long shower. I changed the sheets. I opened the window, let in the cold air, and breathed it in like truth. There were 4 missed calls. A few texts. All from my brother. The last one read, "Seriously? After everything Mom's done for you?" I laughed. A soft, dry sound. Everything she'd done? Like what? Housing me as a child? Feeding me? Letting me stay in a family where I was only welcomed when I was useful? Where I was never celebrated, only tolerated? That's not love. That's obligation. And even that, it turns out, was thin. I didn't respond. Later that day, I received a short message from my mother. "Is something wrong? Why are you doing this?" She didn't say what this was. She didn't reference her words from that night. She didn't ask how I was. She just wanted the silence explained. But I wasn't going to explain. Because explanations are for people who listen. She had spent decades looking through me, treating me like an extra. Her language of love was rationed, calculated, conditional. So I didn't reply. Instead, I made soup for myself, lit a candle, and opened the book I'd bought months ago but never found time to read. The world outside was quiet. White. Still. Inside, I was learning how to be still, too. Every so often, guilt would try to creep in. A voice in the back of my head would whisper, "Maybe you're being cruel. Maybe they'll fall apart without you. Maybe you owe them more." But then I remembered all the birthdays I spent alone. The nights I drove an hour just to bring her a meal when she was sick, and she forgot I was coming. The holidays where I was the last one to sit, the first one to clean, and the only one never thanked. And I would breathe out, and the guilt would pass. This wasn't revenge. This was refusal. Refusal to keep trading my peace for scraps of attention. Refusal to explain why I deserved basic respect. Refusal to wait at the table, hoping someone would notice I hadn't been served. They didn't notice. And now I didn't care. I wasn't angry. Not in the way I used to be. That fiery kind of anger had burned out years ago. What remained was something colder, cleaner. Like ice water. Like truth. They had built a system where I was the support beam. The skeleton. The quiet background. The one who held it all up so they could shine. And now that I had stepped out, the cracks were showing. I imagined them at home, confused. Checking bills. Wondering where the help had gone. Wondering why their perfectly functioning world suddenly needed fixing. They didn't realize it had been me all along, quietly patching every leak. Now they'd have to face it without me. And I would finally face myself. The snow continued all week. I stayed in most days. Walked only when I needed air. Slept deeply for the first time in years. No dreams. No tension in my jaw. No mental list of everyone else's problems. For once, my life was only mine. And it was quiet. But not lonely. Not anymore. The world didn't end. No explosions. No confrontations. Just silence, first from me, and then, slowly, from them. At first, there was confusion. Then disbelief. Then the slow unraveling of a system that had always run on my invisible labor. It began with a voicemail from my brother. His tone was different this time. Less irritation. More unease. "Hey, can you call me back? Mom's freaking out a little. Says the gas got shut off. I don't know what's going on. Just call, okay?" I didn't. I read the transcript once. Then deleted it. 2 days later, another message from him. This time, clipped and tense. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't okay. You can't just vanish. We're family. You can't just cut us off." Can I? Because I had. Quietly. Without a speech. Without a storm. And the world, as I knew it, hadn't collapsed. Only theirs had. There was a time I would have answered that call in seconds. A time when I'd have rushed in to smooth things over, take the blame, fix the mess. But that part of me no longer existed. She wasn't dead. Just retired. And in her place was someone who had finally chosen herself. I went about my days with a new stillness. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore, it felt earned. Each small act of self-care felt like planting something in soil I used to think was barren. I rearranged the kitchen, bought new towels, lit candles in the evening just for myself. I stopped checking my phone every hour, waiting for the next emotional landmine. But they didn't stop reaching out. My mother left a message a few days after my brother's second call. Her voice, usually sharp, was soft, measured, performed. "I don't know what's gotten into you. I've always tried my best. Maybe I made mistakes, but what parent doesn't? You need to stop punishing us." I played it once, then again, and then a third time, just to be sure I heard what I thought I had. There it was. The word. Punishment. She thought this was a game, a tactic, a strategy. As if I was withholding affection to make a point. She still didn't see it. This wasn't about revenge. This was about release. I hadn't stopped speaking to her to hurt her. I had stopped speaking because I had nothing left to say. I had poured out every word I had over the years, and none of them had been absorbed. They had trickled through her fingers like water. My absence wasn't a tactic. It was an ending. And still, they didn't understand. Soon after, I started receiving small offerings. A bouquet sent to my office. A gift box of soaps. A vague card signed "Only love, Mom." No message inside. No apology. No acknowledgement of the words she had said, the ones that split something open inside me that could never be stitched back together. Just gestures. Surface kindness. As if kindness could glue over years of neglect. I didn't respond. And that's when the real unraveling began. My brother sent a longer message, this time by email. A full-page attempt to explain things. He said I was being dramatic, but also that maybe Mom said something wrong. He said I was hurting everyone, that I was needed, that I couldn't just abandon the people who raised me. That line, the people who raised me, clung to me like fog. Raised me how? By forgetting my birthdays? By turning me into the background of every family photo? By expecting my silence and labeling it strength? By loving me only when it was convenient? No. They raised a daughter who believed she had to earn her place in a family she was never truly invited into. And now I had stepped out of that role. They weren't ready for the emptiness I left behind. They were used to me filling in the gaps, smoothing over the rough edges, carrying the weight. But now, that weight sat squarely in their own hands. And they didn't like how heavy it was. The turning point came on a Saturday. I was in the middle of a walk in the park, thick snow lining the paths, boots crunching beneath me, when I saw the missed call. Again, my mother. But this time, she'd left a voicemail that began with something I hadn't expected. Tears. Real ones. Or at least they sounded real. I don't know what I did. You just disappeared. Why are you being so cruel to me? Cruel. The word hit like ice. She had called my silence cruelty, but not once had she named her own. Not the years of being sidelined. Not the holidays where my efforts were dismissed. Not the birthday where she told me I wasn't truly hers. She couldn't see it. She could only see her own discomfort. She wasn't grieving me. She was grieving the loss of the service I provided. And I felt something strange. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. My whole life, I had been the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the steady one. Now that I was gone, they were flailing not because they missed me, but because they missed the version of me that made their lives easier. But she's gone. And I don't think she's coming back. In the days that followed, the messages kept arriving. Some soft, some angry, some manipulative, disguised as concern. But I didn't answer. I didn't return. I didn't bend. Because something inside me had finally, mercifully, locked into place. And I realized, peace is not something you ask for. It's something you protect. They had their chance. Many chances. And now, they would learn to live without me. Without the favors. Without the reminders. Without the quiet acceptance of bad behavior. Without the woman who made sure birthdays were remembered and holidays were soft. They would live in the house without the support beam. And maybe it would collapse. Or maybe they'd patch it up themselves. But I wouldn't be holding it up anymore. I chose me. Finally. And I chose silence not because I had nothing to say, but because they never listened when I did. It came from someone I hadn't thought about in years. A small envelope. No return address. Tucked between bills and advertisements in my mailbox, waiting patiently like a letter from the past. I nearly tossed it aside, assuming it was another card from my mother or my brother, one more attempt wrapped in guilt or artificial cheer. But something about the handwriting stopped me. It was smaller, neater, careful, almost shy. Inside was a note. Just a few lines, written in blue ink. I heard about what happened. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. In 10th grade, when no one sat with me, you made space. You shared your lunch. You said my name when no one else did. I never forgot that. I just wanted you to know you mattered. Even then, there was no signature. Just that. A quiet reminder. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something crack open, not in pain, but in warmth. I had been carrying a weight I didn't know was there. The belief that everything I did had disappeared into nothing. That all my efforts, all my care, all my quiet kindnesses had vanished because they were never acknowledged at home. But they hadn't vanished. They had simply landed in places I wasn't looking. It wasn't about the thank you. It was about the truth. I had always been more than how they treated me. I sat with that letter for a long time, tracing the words with my eyes. And I realized something. I had been living with a map drawn by people who couldn't see me. I had spent years walking paths they approved of, thinking their permission meant direction. But I didn't need their compass anymore. I folded the letter and placed it inside my journal. Not for proof, just for safekeeping. A small reminder that my existence left gentle marks, even if my family never saw them. That same week, the pressure began to build again. Not from me, from them. First, a Facebook post. My mother, smiling in a photo from years ago, captioned, "Families aren't perfect, but love always wins." Hoping to heal what's been broken. A gentle trap. Soft words designed to draw sympathy. I didn't respond. But I read the comments. People writing, "You're such a good mom. She's lucky to have you. Hope she comes to her senses." They didn't know the story. They never do. But that didn't stop the performance. Then came a visit. Unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, standing outside my apartment, holding a small basket of cookies. It had a ribbon on it. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just grown taller inside. She knocked. I didn't move. After a few moments, I heard her sigh. She placed the basket gently on the floor and walked away. I waited until her footsteps faded, then opened the door. Inside the basket, cookies I used to bake for her. My own recipe. The one she'd said was too sweet the last time I made it. And beneath them, a folded letter. Her handwriting, slightly shaky. I know I wasn't always fair. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But you're still my daughter. And I still love you. Still my daughter. Still love you. As if love had survived in silence. As if it could still be claimed, after everything. As if she had the right to speak it now, when I had been begging for it in ways she never saw. I closed the note, put it back in the basket, set the whole thing outside again, not as an act of cruelty, but as a line, a quiet one, clear. I wouldn't go back into a house where love came dressed in conditions. I wouldn't rebuild the bridge they only noticed when it began to crumble beneath them. I had left. I was gone. And still, I was whole. There's a myth people like me carry, the caretakers, the peacemakers, the ones who disappear in the name of harmony. The myth says if you leave, you'll be empty, alone. That your worth is tied to how useful you are to the ones who raised you. But I had left. And in the silence, I had discovered a different truth. I was never meant to carry their weight forever. It was winter still, but the light was changing. The air was softer, less sharp, the kind of cold that hints at something warmer just beneath the surface. I began walking more often, through the quiet streets, past the places I used to rush through, always late, always overloaded. Now I noticed the trees, the way the snow clung to their branches like lace, the sound of my boots in the hush of evening. One morning, I passed a family having breakfast in a cafe window. A mother leaned across the table to wipe jam off her daughter's face. The girl leaned into her touch. No tension. No need to earn anything. I didn't feel envy. I felt peace. Because I knew something now. Love, the kind I used to chase, wasn't about proving myself. It wasn't about overgiving or shrinking to fit. It was about being met, fully, quietly, completely. And if I hadn't had it in that house, it didn't mean I was unworthy. It just meant they didn't know how to give it. But I could still learn how to give it to myself. I stopped just outside the cafe, took out my phone, typed one last message. Not to them, to myself. You don't have to be needed to be valuable. You don't have to be loved to be whole. You are enough. Just as you are. I saved it to my home screen. A reminder. A truth. Mine. That night, I lit one candle, cooked a small meal, played music I liked, not something soft to keep the peace. Something that stirred me, that made me feel awake. I took a photograph of the room, the glow, the food, the snow outside the window. And I realized this is what it means to come home. Not to a place, not to a person, but to myself.